Well, in a still fabulously rural country, as well as having some magnificent cities, I must say, New Zealand still has a very high population of horses, including, of course, thoroughbreds. Many regions where a great number of New Zealanders still own and ride their own horses. Our next speaker, Martin Burns from New Zealand Thoroughbred Racing, last year reviewed thoroughbred welfare in his country from a breeding perspective through horses' racing careers and into their well-being after racing. Martin is also General Manager of Racing and Equine Welfare, overseeing the New Zealand Stud Book, licensing, race programming, as well as being Chairman of the New Zealand Horse Ambulance Trust and Deputy Chair of the New Zealand Equine Health Association. Please welcome to discuss a partnership's approach to thoroughbred welfare and aftercare, Martin Burns.
Good afternoon, and thank you to Caroline for the warm introduction and for the opportunity to share with you a New Zealand perspective on the welfare and aftercare of our thoroughbreds. It is an honour to speak at IFAR, and I congratulate Diana, Di and the other organisers for planning such an interesting series of speakers with whom I'm very pleased to share the stage. In my presentation, I'll outline the approach to thoroughbred welfare that has been adopted by New Zealand Thoroughbred Racing, NZTR, and our current range of aftercare initiatives. In each case, it's the partnerships approach that I wish to emphasise. I won't dwell too long on this, but it's worth noting the New Zealand context. Horsemanship and an affinity for horses are long-standing traditions in New Zealand, which as a settler nation was developed with horses as the backbone of agriculture, local transport and military. New Zealand remains a largely rural economy. Thoroughbred racing was developed in New Zealand in the 1840s and formalised under a national body in 1893. With a strong and broad equestrian community in New Zealand, off-the-track thoroughbreds have a good chance of finding an active and well cared for future in a variety of suitable pursuits, whether as sport horses, polo ponies or pleasure horses. Many have proven to be excellent international sport horses. In 2017, NZTR undertook a comprehensive review of thoroughbred welfare, which included broad consultation of interested parties, both within and outside the racing and breeding communities. Presented above is our vision for thoroughbred welfare, which is anchored on the modern animal welfare concepts, i.e. a good life as the ideal, and is pragmatic to the realities of racing, breeding and retirement. How did NZTR's thoroughbred welfare strategy develop? Consultation took place with a number of groups including government agencies and animal welfare advocates. We concluded that it would be appropriate and practical to adopt the 5 domains model as the basis for thoroughbred welfare guidelines. Whilst thoroughbreds are high value animals that are trained as elite athletes, there are some compromises on the horse's welfare. The 5 domains welfare framework acknowledges that, on balance, and across the 5 welfare aims and provisions, the horse can and must be provided with a life worth living. Our thoroughbred welfare guidelines are currently being updated accordingly, in conjunction with changes to the NZTR rules of racing, which I shall mention shortly. In considering not just our thoroughbred strategy and initiatives, but also how we enhance the aftercare of our horses, NZTR has involved a large number and range of other bodies. This has not only provided a necessarily broad range of perspectives, it has enabled us, as a relatively small organisation, to leverage the skills and resources of others with whom we can identify and share a common goal in the welfare of the horse. Importantly also, NZTR's intentions and efforts are in the process shared and become more broadly understood by parties that are very influential. This in turn assists in underpinning the future approval, or at least the legitimacy, of racing in New Zealand in the minds of our public and our legislators. I mentioned earlier our intended amendments to the rules of racing. The key pending changes are welfare obligations and enhancements to data capture to best ensure traceability from foaling to death or retirement from racing or breeding. Introduction of the concept of the accountable person. This defined person being the person responsible for the welfare of the thoroughbred, including a duty of care and decisions relating to the retirement and rehoming of the horse. The rules will also empower NZTR and our stewards to determine and direct actions that must take place to remedy any apparent welfare compromises and to lay thoroughbred welfare charges if warranted. I expect our new rules and welfare guidelines to be in force in 2019, as we must necessarily consult broadly with participants. Once consultation commences in a month or two, I'll be happy to supply a copy of the proposed amendments to other racing authorities. Speaking more specifically to aftercare initiatives, the partnerships approach continues. A key partner is a not-for-profit group called Beyond the Barriers. Goals of our partnership are to promote the versatility of the thoroughbred as a sport horse, delivery of education, particularly through horse and rider clinics, promotion and management of thoroughbred-specific sport horse events, support for rehomers, and promotion of these activities through social media. NZTR also partners with Equestrian Sports New Zealand, and in 2014 jointly conceived and launched the Thoroughbreds and Equestrian Sports Series, simply known as TIES. Prizes are awarded to the thoroughbred that's best performed across the full equestrian season in the classes of eventing, dressage, and in jumping and show hunter. As Caroline mentioned earlier, it doesn't take much money to form a good incentive in here. I mean, with this we spend $10,000 a year for our annual sponsorship, and they're hugely appreciative of that, so a little goes a long way. Compared to warm bloods, it is well accepted, and our results show that off-the-track thoroughbreds provide a cheap yet very competitive sport horse. The TIE series is a very effective promotional event and has a great following in the equestrian community. A similar partnership has been established with the New Zealand Show Horse Council. Like TIES, the off-the-track show horse series is awarded to the best thoroughbred in class across the season under two components: under the saddle and fashion in the fields lead. Whilst I said in the introduction that off-the-track thoroughbreds have a good chance of securing an active and well cared for second career in New Zealand, this is not guaranteed, and as any of us is aware, neglect can occur for a variety or a combination of reasons. NZTR has therefore developed a relationship with the SPCA in New Zealand. A key component of this is the active assistance in the rescue of thoroughbreds found in neglect. There have been 2 such incidents in the past year, one of which involved a number of mares that were due to foal. Whilst NZTR's financial support has been important, it has been access to skilled persons, horse facilities, and the racing community's network of fosterers and potential rehomers that have proven most beneficial and appreciated by the SPCA. This close relationship has meant that the thoroughbreds concerned were rehabilitated successfully, and there was no adverse media attention. Relevant to horse emergency rescues and also to the conduct of racing is the recent establishment of the New Zealand Horse Ambulance Trust, a charitable trust which NZTR actively assists. As I also mentioned, while we're a relatively small organisation, NZTR has been able to leverage the skills and resources of others with whom we can identify and share a common goal in the welfare of the horse. If you haven't already, I encourage other racing authorities to reach out to organisations in your own country or local communities that have interests in animal welfare. Not only will this enable leverage of each other's personnel and resources, it can also definitely help to build up a reserve of trust and understanding, which can be hugely valuable. It also means that you're more likely to be aware of adverse welfare issues before or instead of these becoming of media interest. My final words of advice are to ensure that these relationships stay active and enduring through regular meetings and, where relevant, written agreements or undertakings. The more time that you invest in these relationships, the more rewarding and effective they become. This slide shows a link to the welfare section of our website, which I invite you to review at some stage. Thank you for your attention this afternoon. I'll be pleased to answer any questions if there's time. Otherwise, I look forward to hearing your perspectives as we find opportunities to socialise over coming days. I wish you all the best in your own endeavours and your enjoyment of the remainder of this conference.